Good evening. Good evening. Happy Monday. Or should I say, happy Hillary Clinton is not your president day. Still cracks me up. Happy President's Day. Happy Donald J. Trump is your president day. I wonder if someone was triggered by that. But what's going on, y'all? Happy Monday. How are you doing on this fine February evening? I don't know about where you are, but it's cold out here. This is where I give thanks for the small blessings in life, like heated seats. So, anyway, I don't know if you guys saw some of my previous posts, my streams of consciousness, if you will. I was talking about what took place in New York, the Big Apple, the city that never sleeps. Let's talk about education, right? There's a guy named Alan Bloom, an author who wrote a book years ago, God, almost 30 years ago now, I believe. It was called The Closing of the American Mind. And one of the things he talked about was the changes in academia. And essentially he was talking about how our kids are being dumbed down. And of course there's the knee-jerk, not my child. Well, no, your child's probably been dumbed down also, unless you've been homeschooling them or you went way far out of your way to make sure that they were not dumbed down, because if you left them to the clutches of the public education system, trust and believe they were dumbed down. But yeah, that's one of the things that Alan Bloom talked about, was the closing of the American mind. And essentially he made the point, and others have made the point, of how cultural Marxism, leftist, regressive, socialist ideology has found its way into academia, as well, of course, as we know, into the political world, and also into Hollyweird, into the media and all that, right? So what we're talking about is the long-term consequences and repercussions of leftist ideology. I've talked about it from the social standpoint, right? I point out the and people are like, oh, you're always beating up on black folks. It's like, no, it's not beating up on black folks if you're telling the truth. Here's the reality, is that before the Great Society, before black folks almost universally accepted cultural Marxism, the out-of-wedlock birth rate in the black community was less than 25%. I think it was approximately 22%. And then the Great Leap Forward, I'm sorry, that's the communist one. The Great Society, same thing. From President Lyndon Big Daddy Pimpin' Johnson and his Great Society, where he started talking about equal outcomes, and the welfare state was born in the United States of America. And we can look, fast forward, and I'll tell you, I'll post the link. Go and look up this CBS 1986, The Vanishing Black Family. Watch it if you dare. Once again, CBS 1986, The Vanishing Black Family. It was a special that was done that actually won a Peabody Award for great broadcasting. And it talked about, so this is roughly 21 years after the Great Society, and it showed the tremendous damage that was done to the black community as a result of embracing cultural Marxism. A mere 21 years, a mere one generation later, we went from 22% out of wedlock birth rate to over 50% by 1986. And if you fast forward another 30 or so years as to where we are today, the out of wedlock birth rate is now in excess of 75%. Yay, cultural Marxism. So we know that there are long-term consequences and repercussions from a societal standpoint, right? But what about in the educational realm? What happens when you allow cultural Marxism to get its roots into the educational realm, into academia? Well, what you end up with is the notorious AOC, as I refer to her, right? Hashtag notorious AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, representing, I believe, the 14th Congressional District of New York. And she's dumb as a box of rocks. I mean, people are like, oh, you shouldn't beat up on... No, listen. She typifies, she epitomizes everything that is wrong with cultural Marxism, everything that is wrong with leftist, progressive, socialist ideology, everything that is wrong with the socioeconomic, geopolitical worldview inherent to leftism, and what happens when you allow that to take root. That young lady, and I call her lady just being courteous, she's under 30, and all she's ever known is cultural Marxism. This is a young lady who was raised on a diet of Captain Planet and the Planeteers, right? Now, here's the thing that's interesting. I'll tell you, those of you know anything about me know that I came to the DMV, which is the DC, Maryland, Virginia metropolitan area. I came many years back doing an internship for my U.S. congressman. And I will tell you that, and I won't say intimidated, but for lack of a better word, I'll say intimidated. I maybe had a few questions, a few doubts about whether I had what it took to be able to go toe-to-toe and be among these people who I perceive to be the best and the brightest. Ha, wow. Yeah. I really thought that as I came to Capitol Hill, everyone I was going to be around essentially walked on waters, that they were all the valedictorians and salutatorians of your class, that they were all, once again, the best and the brightest. And especially those who managed to get elected to public office. Oh my God, the only way you could get elected to public office, you had to have been very smart, right? Yeah. So yeah, it didn't take very long after I came to work on the Hill that the veneer disappeared, that the curtain was ripped back, and I realized that Capitol Hill is full of weapons grade morons. I realized that most of your legislators, your elected officials, fall into three categories. I would say that one of them, the first group is you have the policy wonks, right? And they're few and far between, but these are the guys, the gals, who know what the hell they're talking about. I mean, they know this stuff. They're the ones who actually, they're really out there writing bills. They've studied this in depth. They will bend your ear and talk about these issues intelligently with facts until you turn blue in the face and you tap out, because it's like, wow, this person knows what they're talking about. I would say they're probably no more than 10%, and it's probably like 2 to 3% of those legislators on the Senate and House side are that level of policy wonks. I would say we'll say 10%. So 10% of them are that level of policy wonk where they're really that knowledgeable. I would say you probably have about 60 to 70% of those who kind of fall in the middle, where they kind of sort of know what they're talking about, but they lean heavily on their staff. They have their legislative directors, they have their members of their staff who are experts, and they go with them and they take counsel with them. They know the general topics, but they lean on their staff to kind of keep up on whatever the latest and greatest is, because quite frankly, it's way too much information. When you look at the size of the bills that are passed, it's essentially impossible for a congressman or senator to know everything that's in every bill. It's just not possible. And so the good ones are the ones who do hire good people, and then they delegate that authority and they trust those people to keep them updated so that they can vote intelligently. So we'll say that's about 70%, right? So you got the 10% who are the policy wonks, about 70% are, average, decent, competent. But then you got about that remaining 20% who are the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes of the world, and they're morons, absolute, utter morons. One of the things I talked about before, now, once again, I used to think when I was ignorant about how things really worked, I used to think that the quality of the school that you went to, the ranking of the school that you went to, said something about your overall intelligence. So if you happen to go to an Ivy League school, or if you look at a periodical like the U.S. News and World Report, how it ranks the top schools, right? Every year they do their annual ranking of the top colleges and universities in America. And so you say, oh, wow, if this is a top 10, top 20, whatever what you would call a top tier school, obviously the kids who get into these schools, man, they're the best and the brightest of America. They're the future of America, right? Yeah. And so let's look at Boston University. Not to be confused with Boston College, but let's look at Boston University. There's been a few other distinguished graduates. I want to say off the top of my head that Martin Luther King went there, but don't quote me on that. I had it in my mind, and now I'm having a brain fart moment about who all went there. But you can look at notable alumni from Boston University, and you'll see, fairly distinguished alumni from Boston University. The latest U.S. News and World Report ranking of Boston University ranks them as the 42nd best college in America. 42nd. Now, you have to keep in mind, for context, that there are over 4,000, some numbers say over 5,000, but there's definitely over 4,000 colleges and universities accredited in the United States of America. And so if you're 42nd, that puts you in the top 1%, right? So Boston University is a 1%er university. Their School of Studies and Sciences, specifically their economics program, their graduate school, let me clarify, their graduate school of economics is ranked 23rd. So it's the 23rd best graduate school of economics in the entire United States, right? Now, if you graduate with a degree, a undergraduate degree in economics, that's different from a graduate school degree, but you have to keep in mind that if the graduate program is that highly rated, then the undergraduate program is not exactly shabby, right? So I mean that can, that's not an unreasonable belief to have. So I tell you that once again, Boston University, 42nd ranked college in America, one of the top 1% colleges in America. Expensive school, by the way. I don't remember the exact cost of tuition and fees, but it's a bunch. I mean, you're looking at a good $50,000 a year to graduate from that school. Their School of Economics, right? Top 23 graduate school for economics in the United States. And now consider that among their esteemed alumni, although they haven't listed it as this, but among their esteemed alumni is the notorious AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, U.S. Representative from the state of New York. Yes, the 27, 28-year-old, however old she is, U.S. Representative, who deposed long-term, I think, 10-term or whatever, how many termed, the 10-term congressman who was there before. She supplanted him during the primary. And once she won the primary, it was pretty much a done deal that she was going to win the general, because Republicans pretty much can't win congressional seats throughout most of the state of New York, specifically in the metropolitan New York City area. So this young lady graduated cum laude, right? That means with honors. I think that's like in the top third of her class. with degrees in international relations and economics. The notorious AOC. Remember, cum laude graduate from a top 1% college in America. So she was in the top third of students at a school that is a top 1% school in the United States of America with degrees in international relations and economics. And this weapons grade moron cost over 25,000 people lost out on the opportunity to get a fairly high paying job. And the state of New York lost out on no less than $27 billion. 27 billion with a B. $27 billion in tax revenue because this weapons grade moron who graduated from one of the top 1% colleges in America, and she was in the top third of her graduating class with degrees in international relations and economics. This weapons grade moron did not know that when a company gets a tax credit for bringing jobs to a local area, that city, county, state government is not writing a check to that business. See, here's the thing. I have spoken to multiple young men and women in this metropolitan area recently. And it's weird because I've met a lot who study, and I'm saying, hey, so where'd you go to school? I've met a young lady who went to Lehigh. I met a young man who graduated from University of Maryland. Another one who went to George Mason University. Another one who went to Georgetown. I've met multiple young men and women, millennials, who've graduated with degrees or they did a minor in economics. And every single one of them is economically illiterate. When I ask them questions about Econ 101, they don't know nothing. They know nothing. Not nothing, nothing. Like, I'll say, so, what do you know about, about Adam Smith? They're like, I heard about, he said he's some old guy, the book of the wealth, the money of nations. No, it's the wealth of nations. Yeah, the wealth of nations. Yeah, we talked about that, but we didn't spend a whole lot of time on that. I said, what about Friedrich Hayek? You know anything about Hayek? And I'll tell you, the young man who graduated from George Mason, I said, are you familiar with Dr. Walter Williams? He's like, no, doesn't ring a bell. I'm like, so let me get this straight. You graduated from George Mason University right here in the Metro DC area in Fairfax County, Virginia, where Walter E. Williams is a professor emeritus at that school. One of the most well-known economists in the world. And you ain't never heard of Walter Williams. Man, what the hell are they teaching you there? Oh, I already know. I know. Let me ask you, how well do you know Keynes? Oh, yeah, we know all about Keynes. Yeah. You know anything about Austrian economics? Australian? No, man, not Australia. Austria. Austrian economics. Von Mises, none of those? Nope, never heard of it. And you wonder why these people are morons. It's because they're being taught by morons. See, I call them, the instructors, these professors at these colleges, I refer to them as industrial grade morons. They're very dangerous people because they are, in fact, indoctrinating your children. It's one thing because the average person walking around out there is fairly ignorant about things and they're just a garden variety, museum grade moron. But every once in a while, someone like the notorious AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, somehow ascends to Congress, to the State House, to a position where they are now able to write policy, and that makes them a very dangerous weapons-grade moron. You know they're dangerous because that weapons-grade moron, the notorious AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, played a significant role in pushing back to prevent Amazon from moving into New York City, in the Long Island City area, right, of New York City, bringing, they were calling it, their Amazon 2 headquarters, right, here in the Metro DC area, Arlington, Pentagon City, or Crystal City rather. They decided to, rather than put their Amazon 2 headquarters in just one location, they split it. So half the jobs are going to go to here in the Metro DC area in Crystal City. The other half are going to go to Long Island City right outside of New York City, right across the river, right? The Hudson or whatever, the East River, I think. And so they're going to go there. And they were going to bring 25,000 jobs to that area. Fairly high-paying jobs. The deal that companies work out with employers, with cities, local areas, is that we will bring jobs to your area. And there's not an area out there that doesn't want more jobs, right? So they're like, hey, we will bring jobs. We understand that there will be taxes, but every significant company who knows that they're going to bring a large number of jobs always says the same thing. What you gonna do for me? And the deal always comes down to tax breaks. Always. This is pretty much always the deal. Tax breaks. You come and bring, because you know what these elected officials know? That if 25,000 jobs are created, they're either going to be people who are locally, who will get jobs that are paying more, and so those people will get, their incomes will go up and they'll be paying more in income taxes, or more people will come into the area, which benefits things. You understand, it's a marketplace. And so there's a benefit across the board. Let's just say they bring 25,000 brand new jobs. Well, that means 25,000 new people will be coming in. They'll need apartments to stay in. They'll be shopping at whatever restaurants. I'm going to take a sidebar here and tell you, way back in the day before I was saved, before I was a different man back then. I was a different man. Back in the day, remember 1995, I went to Freaknik in Atlanta. I was hanging out with my boy Terrell. I drove from Colorado to Atlanta to hang out in the debauchery that was Freaknik. You know, anybody who knows what it was, right? It's kind of like almost a spring break. And here's the thing, Freaknik was off the chain. Just all kind of debauchery, right? But here's the reason why the city of Atlanta put the brakes on Freaknik. Because you have to understand is that as people flooded in, see, because people were like, man, the reason why they stopped it because it was racist. You know what I'm saying, man? You know, they had a problem with all those black folks coming into Freaknik, man. And no, bruh, it had nothing to do with racism. It wasn't anything to do with racism. It was economics. See, because what had happened was your cousin and them flooded into Atlanta, just jacking up the traffic. I'm gonna tell you, like, people stopped their car on the Beltway, whatever they call it in Atlanta, and like, I never saw anything like this before in my life. Literally, people just stopped their cars on this Beltway and just got out of their cars and were walking around, we're drinking, we're doing whatever like that. And I saw some things that I'm not gonna tell y'all about, but it's just like the traffic in and out of Atlanta was horrendous. You know, people were partying or whatever like that. Of course, there were fights, there were all kind of things. And you know what happened is that businesses would, because of what would happen, businesses would tell their employees, listen, go home early on Friday or whatever like that, or take the whole day off, work from home, because we don't want you getting caught in traffic. So downtown would be shut down, so they would lose productivity because of all these people flooding into downtown Atlanta, right? Now, there's supposed to be a benefit, because what would that mean? That would mean that the nightclubs would be full, the restaurants would be full, and everything like that. So, it would weigh out, right? The goal is that there's a benefit at the end of the day. Yes, there's an inconvenience, but there's a net gain. There's a reason why places like, New Orleans will host the Super Bowls and Mardi Gras and college bowl games, is that because they know they're set up to accommodate that. and that those people who are coming in are going to bring in more revenue than it costs the city to have all those people. That's the game. That's the Econ 101. That's what every city looks for. The reason why there's 50 million bowl games, right? You got the, your mama bowl, right? Whatever. There's a reason why these cities will try to host a bowl game, because even if only 30,000 people come for the bowl game, that's 30,000 people who are going to be coming in and staying in the hotels, eating in the restaurants and all that. It's the Econ 101 benefit that these cities are looking for by hosting bowl games or conventions and so on and so forth. You have to understand the realities of economics. It's Econ 101. And it's the stuff that they don't teach you in college, especially because your professors are morons. Industrial grade morons is who 90% of college professors are, especially when it comes to economics. So that's the reality of economics, right? So let's go back, because you thought I forgot my place. Let's go back to New York City. Here's what they knew. Even though you got Bill de Blasio, who is a weapons grade moron extraordinaire. He's got like oak leaf clusters, and if there were like ribbons and all that for being a weapons grade moron, he would look like one of those banana boat republic leaders who have all the ribbons and everything and bars hanging off of him, right? That's the kind of moron he is. But as big as a moron as he is, he knew that Amazon coming to New York City was a good deal because it was going to bring 25,000 jobs to the city. He's a moron, but he's an old moron, right? But then you got this young weapons grade moron, the notorious AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who couldn't find her rear end with both hands and a map and a hint at high noon on a summer solstice. She's that stupid. But remember, she graduated in the top third of her class from a top 1% college in America with degrees in international relations and economics. And this weapons grade moron thought that the deal that Amazon got to get tax breaks, $3 billion in tax breaks, she didn't think, right? Because as that dude, Thomas Sowell, says, the problem isn't that Johnny, or we'll say Alexandria, the problem isn't that Alexandria doesn't know how to think. The problem isn't that Alexandria doesn't know how to read. The problem is that Alexandria doesn't know what thinking is. She confuses it with feeling. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez felt that by the city of New York giving a $3 billion tax break to Amazon to bring 25,000 jobs, that she felt that they were going to be writing a check to Amazon. And she was like, well, why would you do that? We got homeless people. We could use that $3 billion in something else. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. See, I have zero sympathy for the people of that congressional district, because you know what that means? Y'all are more stupid than she is. It is what it is. Wow. You guys entrusted that moron to represent you, and now you're paying the cost because you're losing out on over 25,000 jobs, right? You're losing out. And see, this is just the minimum. Remember, it's not just the 25,000 jobs. It's not just the $27 billion in taxes that Amazon would have paid. Remember, we're just talking about what Amazon would have paid. You're failing to think about the fact that all those new employees or people who were existing in town, they would have been getting higher salaries. They would have been shopping at the stores, eating at the restaurants, so on and so forth, creating more revenue for the city in terms of taxes. But because this weapons grade moron, the notorious AOC Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, was elevated to a position way beyond her intelligence, the people of New York are going to suffer. And yes, we should hammer her all day, every day. She is the poster child of the left. Not Nancy Pelosi. She is the poster child for the left. Every time you want to think about why leftism sucks, look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Why you don't want your children to be indoctrinated? When you think, listen, when you run across a leftist, regressive, socialist-minded person, and they're in the education field, just think, if I let my child spend time around them, my child would be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Stupid. See, it's the same reason why I talk about the dangers of cultural Marxism. And when people sit there and think, oh, you're just beating up on black folks, there's a reason why I talk about the difference between the wretched subculture of African Americanism, which is nothing more than cultural Marxism for Negroes. The wretched subculture of African Americanism is nothing more than cultural Marxism for Negroes with a thin veneer of something that seems to be Christianity. It's nothing more than African paganism plus cultural Marxism with a thin veneer of something that appears to be Christianity, so it's more tasteful. That's all cultural Marxism is. That's all African Americanism is. And when you look at the long-term consequences and repercussions of that African Americanism, you look at it from a geopolitical, socioeconomic standpoint, look at where we are today. People will try to blame slavery, but that's stupid. You cannot blame slavery for where black folks in America are today. You could blame, if you're going to blame them, you would blame them on where we were in the first 50 years, maybe in the first 100 years. But if you look at the 100 years after slavery, post-emancipation, right? What you will see is that black folks, by and large, were doing better, that our families were more intact. We only had 22%, and I say only, that's still high, but only 22% of black families were single-parent households or children being born out of wedlock. Today, it's over 75%. There's a reason why, because of cultural Marxism, there's a reason why the African-American community of all ethnic groups in America has the lowest median household income. It's only about $30,000 a year out of the African American community because of cultural Marxism. We were the guinea pig. We were the canary in the coal mine for implementing leftism. And all you had to do was look 50 plus years down the road, 2 to 3 generations further down the road, and you can see the damage that has been wrought by embracing that wretched subculture of African Americanism, as opposed to someone like myself and virtually all the people who I associate with who also have permanent tans, and we are American blacks. And you know what we do? We embrace the culture of success, because the principles of success are universal. You do not have to be of a particular ethnicity in order to embrace and utilize these success principles. And you know what? Here's why you know it's true, because you can look at other black folks from what they call the African diaspora. So that means black folks from Africa, right? Black folks from the Caribbean, like my wife's family. And you know what you'll see? The other black people. And keep in mind, the average everyday white person cannot tell you the difference between, just by looking, just on sight, cannot sit there and go, oh yeah, that black person's from Chicago and that one's from Nigeria. They can't tell you the difference just by looking at us. If they don't hear us speak or anything like that or see your name, they can't tell you the difference. But the difference is culture. And when you've embraced cultural Marxism, you're going to suck. And not only are you going to suck, what's worse is that your grandchildren are really going to suck. Because there's long-term consequences and repercussions for embracing cultural Marxism. See, the city of New York is just getting a taste, a small taste, of what happens when you allow a weapons-grade moron like the notorious AOC Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to be elevated way beyond her intelligence. They've lost a mere 25,000 jobs and a mere $27 billion in tax revenue on the surface. Oh, it's going to be worse going forward, because you know what that means? What that means is other companies are watching. Other companies who may have contemplated moving are like, oh, hell nah, I ain't moving there. Not as long as that moron's in charge or in a position of influence. It's a ripple effect. That's the danger of cultural Marxism. That's the danger of leftism. That's the reason why you never, and people think I'm being extreme, never, ever, ever, ever. Did I say ever? Ever allow a leftist, regressive, socialist-minded person to get into a position of power and influence. Don't do it. People think I'm being extreme, but I'm telling you like this. To me, a cultural Marxist, a leftist, is really only a notch below a pedophile. I trust them only barely as much as I trust someone like R. Kelly to babysit a daughter. They're barely below R. Kelly in terms of how wretched they are. That's my view on leftists. Why do I have that view? Because I actually pay attention. I've been studying that. I've paid attention to see, there's people out there who still don't realize what really took place. They don't realize that 25,000 jobs lost. Listen, the Metro DC area, especially Northern Virginia, is full of leftist-minded people, but they're not as stupid as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Okay? So they realize that, yeah, we're anti-big company. They talk all that crap, but they want the jobs. As opposed to somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who once again has been fed a steady diet of Captain Planet and the Planeteers, and she's been influenced by all sorts of people like Bernie Sanders, who, by the way, remember, Bernie Sanders wrote letters or wrote some paper about how women fantasize about being gang raped, so there's that, besides the fact that he's a commie piece of crap, but, this is who these people are. And you can call me extreme if you want to, but I know who they are, and I don't trust them because I've studied what happens when you allow them to be in positions of influence. There's never a tax that a leftist has not liked. Look at California. They're trying to tax everything. Their whole idea is, even, did you pay attention to the fact that weapons grade moron was like, well, we need to have a 70% tax rate. I looked at the highest paid female celebrities, right? And it was amazing when I saw gosh, now I'm drawing a blank on it. Of course, you got Beyonce and a couple other singers, whatever, and they were making tens of millions of dollars. Well, guess what? If this moron was allowed to have her way, like Taylor Swift or whatever the name, she would have taxed them 70%. So I think, I want to say it's Taylor Swift, but don't quote me on that. I think she earned like 83 million or something like that. Do you understand that according to the tax plan of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Taylor Swift would have paid $56 million in taxes? People would be like, well, that's not a big deal because she still have 23 million. Are you stupid? Who do you think is going to sit there and go, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and bust my butt. I'm going to go out and do these shows, singing and dancing. I'm not saying that singing and dancing is such hard work, but it is relatively hard work. And who the heck is going to go out there and sing and dance and break a sweat and do all that, being out on tour for months out of the year, knowing that a weapons grade moron like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is just waiting, sitting there like this, sitting there like R. Kelly looking at your daughter, like, I'm going to get 70% of that. You really think people are going to go out there and do that knowing that somebody's going to rape them for 70% of their income? You're stupid if you think so. Seriously, you have to be extra stupid or just be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the people who voted for her. So listen, I now I'm all hyped up. I saw somebody said, you're really upset about the, I get a little hyped up because just the more I thought about it, I'm like, my God, how do we keep finding ourselves in this position? But here we are. Anyway, I hope this is why I do these Econ 101 videos. Listen, I do not have a degree in economics. I've never actually even taken a class in economics. Thank God I did not. If I did, I'd probably be as stupid as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because most economics professors are morons. What I did is I've spent years reading people like Thomas Sowell, reading Hayek, reading von Mises, reading that dude, the teacher, Milton Friedman, listening to Walter E. Williams. I've been studying that and looking at the way the real world works. And that's why I understand economics. And that's why I thumb my nose at 90% of the people walking around with economics degrees, because I know who they've been indoctrinated by, and they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know how the world really works. Had to get that off my chest. So anyway, listen, I got to run. I go pick up my dry cleaning. But always great talking to you guys. I hope I gave you something to think about. If you probably laughed a few times at me going out on a rant. Whew. But thanks for listening in. Please share. Take care. God bless.